It is a battleground of logistical precision, tactical innovation, and pure strategic genius. Today, we peel back the layers of time to analyze the 10 greatest military minds who didn't just win wars, but fundamentally engineered the world we live in today. From Alexander the Great to the unmatched brilliance of the Eastern masters, are you ready to see who truly mastered the art of command? Alexander the Great. The master of logistics, Alexander's legend isn't just about the sword, it's about the reach. At the age of 20, he inherited a machine and turned it into an unstoppable force of nature. His brilliance was his mastery of combined arms, the integration of heavy cavalry with phalanx infantry. Think of the Battle of Gaugamela. Faced with a force triple his size, he didn't panic. He analyzed the battlefield, realized the enemy line was overextended, and executed a wedge formation strike directly at the heart of Darius's command. But what truly sets him apart is his logistics. How do you feed and maneuver 40,000 men through the arid wastes of Asia Minor without a total collapse? Alexander revolutionized the advanced base system, securing supply lines before he even engaged the enemy. He was the first to understand that the war is won in the baggage train before it is won on the front line. Every map he drew was a masterclass in spatial awareness and geographic exploitation. He didn't just conquer territories, he mapped the limits of the known world. When we speak of Genghis Khan, we speak of the most efficient military system ever devised. He transformed the fragmented nomadic tribes of the steppe into a synchronized killing machine. His genius was in his organization, the decimal system, which divided his army into units of 10, 100, 1,000, and 10,000. This wasn't just administrative. It allowed for perfect, instant command and control across vast distances. But his true masterpiece was the YAM, the world's first high-speed communication network. In the 13th century, he created a system where intelligence traveled as fast as a rider could gallop. While his enemies were still sending smoke signals, Genghis was receiving detailed reports from hundreds of miles away. During his campaigns, he used feigned retreats, drawing opponents into deep, narrow valleys where his archers, the most advanced projectile engineers of the age, could unleash absolute destruction. He didn't just win battles, he engineered the total collapse of his opponent's systems, turning their own size against them. Hannibal Barca, the name that struck terror into the heart of the Roman Republic. When we analyze Hannibal, we are analyzing the quintessential master of the outnumbered force. His legend was born not on the battlefield, but in the improbable logistics of crossing the Alps with tens of thousands of troops and war elephants. This wasn't just a march, it was a geopolitical engineering feat, bypassing Roman maritime strength to strike where they were weakest. But his true masterpiece, studied by every modern general, is the Battle of Cannae. Faced with a massive Roman force double his size, Hannibal executed the perfect pincer maneuver, using a controlled retreat in the center to encircle and annihilate the Roman legions. He turned the battlefield into a calibrated hydraulic press, crushing his enemy through pure angular and spatial analysis. His genius lay in his unmatched ability to turn his enemy's numerical superiority against them. To talk about Mehmed the Conqueror is to talk about a true visionary of military engineering and strategic thought. At the age of 21, he faced the Theodosian walls, a fortress that had withstood every siege for 1,000 years. Mehmed did not rely on standard medieval brute force. He revolutionized siege warfare by integrating the world's most advanced ballistic technology. He didn't just order cannons, he worked with engineers to design and cast the basilic, a massive artillery piece capable of shattering these ancient defenses. But his most audacious engineering feat occurred in the middle of the night. When the Golden Horn was blocked by a massive chain, Mehmed commanded his entire fleet of 70 ships to be hauled out of the water across hills and land, bypassing the barrier completely. He didn't just attack a fortress, he bypassed geography, broke conventional thinking, and introduced a new era of gunpowder warfare that echoed for centuries. Julius Caesar's brilliance was not just as a general, but as the ultimate Roman military engineer. He understood that the legionnaire's sword was only as good as the fortifications he fought behind. The defining moment of his career was the siege of Alesia. Trapping the Gaulish forces within the city, Caesar was suddenly faced with a massive relief army approaching from outside. Instead of retreating, he ordered his legions to perform a logistical and engineering miracle. They built 2 concentric walls, the circumvallation to trap Alesia inside, and the contravallation to defend against the relief forces outside. This siege within a siege engineering is legendary. Caesar and his men were fighting in both directions simultaneously, relying entirely on the stability and geometric precision of their earthworks. Caesar conquered through advanced fortification, rapid logistical adaptation, and the absolute control of the battlefield's topography. Napoleon Bonaparte redefined how armies were structured and maneuvered across the continent. His genius was operational and structural. He replaced the rigid, centralized armies of the past with the corps d'armée system, semi-independent units containing their own infantry, cavalry, and artillery. This allowed him to move vastly larger forces across huge distances with terrifying speed, able to operate as a cohesive fist or spread out to occupy critical terrain. At Austerlitz, his masterpiece, he tricked the Allied coalition into abandoning the high ground by feigning weakness. He then launched a devastating wedge assault through their weak center, dividing and annihilating them. For Napoleon, artillery was not a secondary support. It was the main hammer, and his tactical innovation centered on the concentration of firepower to create a localized, decisive breach in the enemy line. He engineered the structure of the modern army, optimized for speed and impact. Khalid ibn al-Walid, the Sword of Allah, is one of the few generals in history who fought and won over 100 battles without suffering a single defeat. His dehasa was in his complete mastery of terrain and cavalry warfare. At the Battle of Yarmouk, faced with a Byzantine force far larger than his own, Khalid didn't fight head-on. Instead, he used the geological weakness of the battlefield, a massive ravine. He deliberately lured the Byzantine forces into this bottleneck, effectively cutting off their escape routes and turning their superior numbers into a chaotic, unmaneuverable physical constraint. His use of a mobile reserve, a highly trained elite cavalry unit held in the rear to strike at critical moments, was centuries ahead of its time. Khalid was a master of asymmetrical, high-mobility warfare, using the environment as his primary auxiliary force to achieve strategic dominance. When we talk about Subutai, we are talking about perhaps the most lethal strategic mind the world has ever known. He was the primary mastermind behind Genghis Khan's expansion and the subsequent conquests. Subutai's genius was global. He did not simply run campaigns. He managed multiple synchronized operations spanning thousands of miles. His Subutai doctrine centered on strategic multi-front coordination, which would not be formalized in Western military theory until the 20th century. During his invasion of Europe, he coordinated 3 different Mongol armies to attack simultaneously, striking deep into Hungary and Poland with perfect timing and managing communication across a distance that took weeks for traditional messengers to travel. Subutai treated war like a grand optimization problem, integrating high-speed communication with massive, synchronized troop movements. He was the most dangerous man of his era, a strategic systems engineer of unmatched precision. Gustavus Adolphus was the visionary who modernized European warfare, effectively creating the template for the combined arms doctrine that dominates every modern military to this day. He inherited a static army and turned it into a flexible, optimized machine. His genius lay in his structural innovation. He realized the static infantry formations were vulnerable to maneuverable firepower. Gustavus revolutionized the relationship between infantry, cavalry, and artillery. Instead of heavy, slow cannons, he introduced lighter, mobile, field artillery that could move with the infantry. Musketeers were organized in shallower lines, maximizing firepower. He pioneered the salvo fire, musketeers firing in a single, devastating blast rather than alternating, perfectly timed with cavalry and artillery support. Gustavus didn't just use technology, he optimized how human resources and technology worked together as a single, lethal system on the field. Sun is a mathematical phenomenon in naval warfare history. An admiral who never had formal naval training, he defeated the entire Japanese invasion fleet through logic, engineering, and sheer strategic precision. He designed the turtle ship, Geobuxion, the world's first true armored assault ship, featuring an iron-spiked dome that made it immune to traditional boarding tactics. His masterpiece was the Battle of Myeongnyang. Facing 133 Japanese warships with only 13 of his own, Yi Sun-sin calculated the exact tidal shift and extreme currents of the Myeongnyang Strait. He channeled the entire Japanese fleet into this narrow strait at the peak of the current, effectively creating a bottleneck where their numbers became irrelevant and their ships were wrecked by the very waters they tried to master. It was a victory of pure mathematical timing and spatial analysis, achieving impossible odds through precise environmental engineering. These 10 names were not only warriors of history, they were also engineers, logistical planners, and visionaries who pushed the boundaries of their time. Choosing just one is impossible, but they all have one thing in common. They transformed the impossible into a mathematical and strategic possibility. So, which commander tops your list? Let's discuss in the comments. Subscribe to Dark History AI's next analysis to unravel another mystery of history.